All right, hello everyone. This is Pablo again with Crafties 915. And in today's video, as promised, I'm going to show you how to calibrate your Expert II LX using a file that you need to download from gccworld.com. And it's called a VLCD file. That's going to help you calibrate your machine. But there's a couple of ways to do it using the VLCD file and then also using your machine itself with the settings that are written on the bottom of the machine. So if you want to learn how to calibrate your Expert II LX for contour cutting, stick around.
Okay, so for the first thing that I'm looking for is looking at the bottom of my machine. Along with the serial number, you have the pen or blade offset, and you have the length and width of your uploader. Okay, and so those are done by the factory, part of their quality control, to set the the offset, the calibration.
Okay, so your next step is going to be to go to gccworld.com and you're going to go to support and go to the download area. On the download area, you're going to look for the VLCD file. So you go to Vinyl Cutter, go to your Expert II or whatever machine you have, and you have the different products. You have the Cricut software, you have the product brochure, you have the driver, but then you have other. And you have cutter offset test files that you can download. You have a clip art library, and then you also have the VLCD for Windows. That's the one that you're going to use. Now, depending on your machine, you may be able to use what they have available, or you may have to contact GCC in order for them to provide you with the one for your specific machine. Because my cutter is one of the older models. It's over 5 years old. I had to contact them, and they sent me the VLCD file for my cutter. But if it's one of the newer Expert II LXs or Expert II LX, excuse me, if it's one of the newer Expert II LX cutters, then this one would be the one that you would use. So you have this to download, and you also have this to download. Okay, and this is the uploader file. Okay, so now that you downloaded your VLCD file, and it is the right version of the VLCD 3 file, with your Cricut software open, and with the VLCD file open, you're going to connect to your machine. Now make sure that your machine is on in order for the file to read the settings, and it's also that your machine is also connected to your computer. So here, if you hear the noise in the background, I had to turn on my machine, and I had to connect it via the USB. And so now that it is connected and it is on, then I'm going to click on this drop down button and select my Expert II 24 LX, and I'm going to connect. Now, as you can see, when it connects, it gives you, the parameters for, your settings and then your adjustments. Okay. And so for the scaling test, This was done at the factory. Okay, and for the scaling test, they're supposed to draw a square that's 500 times 500 millimeters. Okay, and then they measure the actual output. Okay, and so my settings on my machine, the length was actually 496, and it was 500.8. Okay, and also the offset, my x-axis was -1, and then my y offset was negative. It was 1.3. So actually, this thing needs to be adjusted. Okay, and so now that I have that, I click on Offset Update, and now it's at the calibration and at the updated parameters that needs to be done, that was done at the factory. Okay, so now if I want to contour cut something, it should give me a good result. So that would be your first step, to do it with the factory settings. Okay, so let's close this down. Okay, and let's go ahead and print a test output and see how it is. Okay, so I have a test image that I'm going to use to test my calibration on my machine. And this is a square that I drew, that I made. That's about 2.6 inches by 2.6 inches. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make that square bigger. I'm going to make it about 6 inches by 6 inches. And I'm going to set it right in the middle of, my printed page. My work settings, my area, my working area is a letter size. It's 8.5 by 11. So that's the size of a sheet of paper. This is going to be this square that's about 6 inches wide. And I'm going to set it right in the middle. And the way I do that is I go to Design, click on Align, and I'm going to align it to the middle on both the horizontal and the vertical axes, and Align to Page. Click OK, and that's how it's going to be printed. Now I'm going to go to Tools, Set Register Marks, and I'm going to bring in my register marks. I'm going to click outside my working area and then click on the register marks and bring them in just a little bit. That way they are printed also with the sheet. The next step is I'm going to go to File and then Output. Now notice that my profile is set to cut mode, but it has to be cut with AAS. And I'm going to do it for sticker cutting. It doesn't matter, really. It doesn't matter, which profile you use, but I'm going to do it at sticker cutting because I'm going to be using a regular sheet of paper. And so that's about more or less the same thickness as the sticker paper. I go to Preview. Okay, now notice that because I don't have my square selected, it's not showing anything, so it's not really going to print anything. So that's why I always hit Preview. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to go again to Print, because remember, we have to print this first. I had it on the output, so on output there's nothing, so the machine is recognizing that, hey, you have nothing to output. I have to print this first. So I have my right printer. I have my settings wrong. I have to set this at landscape. Okay. And then the output, make sure that you center it. That way it is centered on the page. Okay. So we have it at landscape, and let's click OK, and it's going to print. Okay, let me show you what my machine printed, my printer. As many of you know, I like to include mistakes because that's something that you all can learn from, and I've learned a lot from my mistakes. And so notice how this square printed. It looks awful. I mean, that is heads that need cleaning. Okay, my register marks came out great, but however, the image itself that I'm going to use to test came out awful. And so if I were to go ahead and create the contour lines on that, it's going to take all those streaks into account. And so I don't want that. And the reason that it printed like that is because I need to clean my print heads on my machine, and also because I did not select on my settings any photographic mode. I have it on regular text mode, and regular text mode, anytime that you are going to print a picture or a graphic, it's going to give you some streaking. So make sure that you have the settings on your printer set correctly. So that's one common mistake that people make when they're doing contour cuts and they're printing full color images, and they notice that they have streaking on them, and they say, hey, what's wrong with my printer and stuff. There might be nothing wrong with your printer. It just might be that your settings are set incorrectly, and so you have to have your right settings on your printer. So let me fix that. Let me do a head cleaning on my printer and set it to a photographic mode, and then we'll print this sheet again. Okay, so I reprinted my sheet, and notice how clean that came out after the head cleaning and after setting it to photographic mode. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set it on my carrier sheet. And this is a Siser carrier sheet that I use. I'm going to set it right there. Now normally I would use a squeegee to set it, but I don't know where I misplaced it. And so I'm just using my fingers. And so there it is. Now I'm going to put it on the machine, and I'm going to create the contour cut lines on my software, and then we're going to see if it cuts correctly. Okay, so here we go. We have our sheet, our test sheet on the machine. So now I'm going to set my origin by taking the machine offline, moving my blade right on top of that first register mark, and that register mark is the one with the horizontal, vertical, and diagonal lines. Okay, so right on top of it, hit origin set, and then bring your machine back online. Okay, so now let's go to the Cricut 4 software, create our contour lines, and cut. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to create my contour lines on that square. So first I have to select the square. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the contour, create contour line icon up here in this in your top menu, and it's this one with the blue square behind it. Or you can just hit your K key and it would create them. So click there. Okay, we have background recognition set at 20 at the maximum. Really, for this one, it doesn't really matter that much. The contour offset is at 0.1, but I'm really gonna set it at 0. And the reason I'm gonna do it at 0 is because I wanna see how close to the edge of the black square this is going to cut. Okay, and then well, you know what? No, let's do 0.1. Just so that you can see the contour line around it. 0.1 inch. And then the color, you can always change the color of your contour lines, depending on what you like. I'm going to be using a red color for the contour line. Now remember, you already printed your image, so there's no contour lines being printed. One of the viewers asked me, how do I prevent, my printer from, printing the contour lines? Well, print your images before you create the contour lines. If you want to create the contour lines beforehand to see how it's going to cut, how they're going to look, do it, but then click on the contour line and delete them, and then create them again once you're going to cut. So now that I have my contour lines set, I'm going to calculate. Okay, and so if you notice, that's where it's going to cut around. Okay, around the black square. I go to File, Output. This time we're going to go Output. Click OK. And then I'm going to preview. The settings, I'm going to leave them the same. The pressure at 60. I'm going to preview. Okay, and that's the square that it's going to cut. Then once I do that, I click Output, and it should already start reading the laser is going to start reading the register marks. Okay, so let's do that. And so there's the machine reading the register marks. I caught it at the tail end of it. Okay, and so there it is. It cut, and let's see how close and how clean of a contour cut it made. Okay, and so here's my image already contour cut. If you notice that the machine went twice around it, okay, don't panic. That's because what I did, the machine first cut around the image that I wanted, and then it cuts a wheat box around it. Okay, and that's how I have it set up. There was a question by one of the viewers that asked, how do I get rid of the wheat boxes? Especially for sticker cutting. I can show you in another video how to get rid of the wheat boxes, especially for contour cutting, but I always like to include them. And the reason that I like to include the wheat boxes is because it makes it easier for me, but it's individual tastes. Okay, so if you notice that the machine went twice around that square, that's because it's cutting a wheat box that I have on my settings. And so I'm looking at the cut. It looks pretty good, pretty even. This I'm not worried about because it's probably, I didn't set enough cutting pressure. But if you look around, it looks pretty good. Okay, and so if you're cutting stickers and other images that you want that little white border around, You know, 0.1 inches is pretty good. Okay. Okay, so that is one way to calibrate your machine, is by going with your factory settings. I mean, when in doubt, go to the factory settings, and you're going to get great results. Now, if you have dropped your machine, if something has happened to your machine where you pulled the vinyl from the pinch rollers and forced your machine, or something happened to it, you may need to do another calibration. And let me show you how to do that calibration. Okay, so let's say, for example, that you know, you didn't have your factory settings, and you know, you want to calibrate this machine, or the factory settings didn't quite work for you, and so you want to calibrate it, you know, by doing this trial run. So what I'm going to do, I went into my VLCD 3 file, and I totally messed up my offsets. Okay, they're totally messed up, and so just to show you, you know, how to do it manually. So now that I have, you know, this square and my register marks already set, I'm going to print it out. Okay, and I already have my settings done and everything, so that should print a good sheet. And then I'm going to do my register marks, or my contour marks. Sorry, my contour marks. I'm going to leave it at 0.1 inches, and I'm going to click on calculate. Okay, and so this is supposed to give me the same output as before, with the you know, the calibration, you know, that I did before. It's supposed to give me the same image, you know, printed out and all that. But when I actually do my actual cutting, it's going to be off. It's going to be very off, okay, because I messed up the settings, you know, the calibration or the offset settings on that. So let's do a test cut, a test output, so that you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to File, Output, click OK, click Preview, and then let's see how that prints out. Okay, so sometimes you have to just reset your sheet so that it reads the register marks correctly. So let's see how this contour cut came out. Okay, so here's one that the calibration is all messed up, and you're going to see, you know, how messed up it is. So first I'm going to take out the wheat box from this one, and I'm doing it on regular paper, you know, because, you know, you don't, for this you don't have to use your media, your sticker media, or your Nina paper or anything like that. So this is my wheat box. Okay, and notice how terrible my contour looks. Notice how my y-axis, this border right here, this bottom border, is a lot wider than this top one. And notice how the right border, or the right contour line, is very wide, and then this one over here on the left, it cuts right into the edge of the square. And as a matter of fact, I mean, there was, a little part on my wheat box. Okay, so this is terrible. This is not going to work. So what you do with this is, if you don't have your factory settings, then you have to actually measure, how far off you are from the actual image. And depending on what units of measurement you're using, I'm using millimeters because it's a lot more precise. Then you're gonna adjust the offset on your VLCD file accordingly. And so here I'm gonna have to move it about maybe about 1.5 millimeters to the left, so negative. I'm gonna have to decrease it about negative 1.5 millimeters, and then here on the Y, I'm gonna have to move it up about half, maybe 0.75 up. And so I go into my VLCD file and make those adjustments. Okay, so here I am on my VLCD file. I'm going to connect to my Expert 24 LX. Connect. I go to my adjust settings. I go to my offset functions. And so remember that when I measured it, I needed to adjust about 1.5 millimeters. So I'm gonna decrease about 1.5 right here, just by clicking in increments of 0.025. So there I go. And then on my Y, I said that I was gonna adjust it about 1 millimeter. So I go up to 1, and then do an offset, click on the offset update button. Okay, so there my offset is going to be at 1, and then my X offset is my Y offset at 1 and my X offset at 0.2. And I go through the whole thing again. I print my sheet. Then I go through the whole process again. I do a test cut, see how close I am, and so forth. And you make the adjustments on your VLCD file accordingly. Okay, and so that's how you do it if you didn't have your factory settings with you. All machines are going to come with factory settings, and so my advice is set it to the factory settings. If you don't have them, then do your own right here by doing a test print, doing the cut, seeing how much you're off, and then adjusting the X and Y offset. Remember that the X offset, for those of you that failed graphing section in algebra, the X is going from left to right, and the Y is going from up and down. Okay, so X is left to right, Y is up and down. Okay, so that's it. Okay, thank you for watching, and thank you for your comments on my videos. Your input, really makes this channel, so I appreciate that very much. And if you have any other suggestions for other videos, let me know. The next video is going to be on kiss cut and die cut stickers, and also how to get rid of the wheat box. I know one of the subscribers asked for that, so I will include that in the next video. So thank you for watching. Happy crafting, and we'll see you next time.